Okay, we're live. Hello, everyone. Let us know if you can hear us. If we're live, if we're here, I'm going to check really quickly because every single time I'm like, are we here? Are we live?
Are we here? Can you hear
working? Me? Hi. Oh, yay, it's working.
Woohoo.
Oh, is that me that's making that sound? Okay, it's definitely me. Okay. I was hearing myself in an echo.
Oh, no.
Hi, everyone. Welcome.
Hello.
I'm going to let people trickle in. Wow, excited. Okay. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the June live show for the Crusty Club. Today, we're going to be talking about Loveless by Alice Oseman. Oh, we all have the book. Wow, we'd love to see it. That's so cute.
Yes.
But before we get into talking about Loveless, as usual, I'm going to let you all know our next couple of picks for the book club. So this month in July, I don't have copies of either of these books right now, but this month in July, we are reading The Echo Wife, which is a science fiction thriller that follows a woman whose husband clones her. And then I think he has an affair with the clone, and then he's murdered, and both women are kind of like, okay, what do we do about this? I don't know if the wife kills him. I have been avoiding all the information for this book since I initially heard about it, and I'm slowly waiting for all my memories to fade. So when I read it, I'm not, knowing what's going on because it's really thin. I thought it was going to be way bigger. I saw it at the library, and it's really thin. But yeah, so that's what we're reading this month in July. And I do have also my announcement video that I posted pretty recently, so you can go watch that and hear about all the co-hosts and things like that. But in August, we will be reading Strange the Dreamer, which is a fantasy book about a lost magical city of Weep and its dark past. So in that book, we're following our main character, Laszlo, who is an orphan and a junior librarian, and he's trying to figure out what is going on with the city. He's super obsessed with it, and so I think he goes on a journey to find the city. I don't know too much about this book, except that I've heard wonderful things from literally everybody, so I'm really excited to read that. So again, July, we're doing The Echo Wife, and in August, we are doing Strange the Dreamer. Now that we've talked about all of that, I'm going to go ahead and let you guys all know, if you're here for the live show, leave a pink heart if you've read the book, and leave maybe a black heart if you haven't read the book in the comments, or just write pink and black, whatever you want to do. Go ahead and leave that in the comments so I can kind of see how many people have finished the book and how many people are just here kind of to chat before we get into the spoilery section of the live show. And while you're all doing that, I'm going to have both Jess and Gabby introduce themselves, and then they're also going to tell us a little bit about what they're currently reading and how they feel about their current reads. So you guys go ahead.
Go ahead.
Oh, okay. Well, let me... So talking about myself. Ew, okay. Hi, I'm Jessica. Yeah. Also have a booktube channel. What am I currently reading? I'm in the middle of 10 books, but the one that's closest to me is Ace of Spades, which is so funny because I have UK covers, and I'm not.
Oh my god!
I'm just a little obsessed with the UK covers. But I am 150 pages into this. Mm-hmm. I'm enjoying it so far. It's a really fun read. I wouldn't say it's a new favorite, but it's definitely an interesting I'm nosy. I want to know who's doing what. If you don't know, it's about Gossip Girl meets Get Out, private school, rich people problems. So it's a fun time.
It was so good.
Yeah, I just read Ace of Spades last week, and I really enjoyed it. Yeah.
You did? Yes.
Yeah. I read it last month, and it was so good.
Yeah.
Everyone's been loving it, so I'm really excited to see how it kind of all wraps up, because I'm definitely interested.
Yeah. My name is Gabby. On my channel, I read a lot of thrillers and horrors and romances is my usual go-to genres. But I'm currently reading Dial A for Aunties. I'm listening to it on audio.
So good.
It's so cute. I'm obsessed. I'm about 60% of the way through it. And it's really fun. It kind of reminds me of Finlay Donovan is Killing It. It has that same kind of fun, mystery murder vibes. But yeah, I'm really enjoying it.
Ooh, that warms my heart. That book was so good. I honestly thought, for some reason, that it was purely a thriller or purely like a mystery, but it's very. I think it's a romance book with like
very
a little bit of
heavy.
Yeah. I definitely was like, oh wow, I love it here.
I know, I wasn't expecting that, so I'm like, okay, sure.
Yeah, it was so good. So I am currently reading, shockingly enough, the last book in the To All the Boys I've Loved Before series. I never read it, and I started reading it like yesterday, or the day before. It's really interesting. It's way different from the movie.
100%.
Already, it's completely. I was like, why are we not?
Nosy? I want to be nosy. Yeah. What team are you? Are you?
Okay, here's the thing, because when I watched the first movie, I watched the movie before I read the book. I was very much not a Peter fan. I was like, no. And then I read the book and I was like, okay, Peter is like way funnier in the book. I think he has a lot more character in the actual series, but I'm more on the Peter side only because I think that John Ambrose is a great person, and I think that he and LJ are like too similar to the point that they don't really challenge each other. You know, like Peter, although I feel like he makes very bad decisions, like overall, John Ambrose is a better person. Overall, he's just a better person. But I think that he and Lara Jean together are just going to be like a very lukewarm couple, whereas like Peter adds a lot of flavor. At least book Peter adds a lot of flavor to the relationship, even though he's kind of like silly. But I'm like, teenage silliness, okay, like whatever, you know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I feel that. I stand John Ambrose mostly because Jordan Fisher and like how the movie did not do him justice.
Oh my god, they did him so dirty.
They did him so dirty. But like I could totally see why people love Peter. I just like my energy, I'm like, I would never date a Peter, man.
Yeah.
But I respect that. You actually put it in a good way where he's an interesting character. I completely agree. John Ambrose McLaren, he and I would be sitting in the room just reading and like, you want to watch a movie? Like, and that'd be it.
Yeah. Gabby, have you seen any of the movies?
I watched the first one and loved it, and then I didn't really like the second one very much, but I really liked the third one. I thought it was cute.
Yeah, I feel the same way about literally exactly the same way as you do. Because I just think that John Ambrose's character, I would love like a spin-off series with John Ambrose as the main character. Like even now, I think it would still be great. Because they just, whatever they did with that second movie, whatever it was, I know. Can we go back?
Yeah.
Can we go back and redo it? Because that was not it. Oh my gosh, Gabby's mom is here. Hello, Gabby in the chat. Oh, she read it. We love to see it. Oh my god, we have a celebrity here. Hi, Gabby's mom. I love seeing your mom's comments and stuff.
Oh, yeah, that's so cool.
All right, I'm seeing a lot of pink hearts, so this is a good sign. Oh yeah, I'm also interested to see this as well, like what people who are not Arrow-A's think about the book, because that's going to be like super interesting. Okay, so we're going to start out talking about some aspects of the book, and we're going to start non-spoilery. So if you haven't finished the book, you can still stay. I will let you know when we get into the spoilers and when you can dip out and finish the book if you decide to. Also, I saw this comment really quickly. We love to see it. Yes, Vanishing Half is so good. All right, so let's go ahead and talk about our ratings and general non-spoilery thoughts. Everyone in the comments, go ahead and put your ratings as well and give your general thoughts on what you thought about the book. But I will let you guys go first.
Ooh, wait. Yeah, you go first, maybe.
Before we get into that, actually, let me give a quick summary of the book because I always forget to do that. And I know someone had asked me about that in one of the past live shows. But really quickly, if you are here and you haven't read the book, you don't know anything about this book, and you're kind of like, what's going on? Let me give a really quick summary because we got into talking about To All the Boys and I was way too excited to even remember. But Loveless follows our main character, Georgia, who is graduating from high school and going into college. and she has never had her first kiss. She's never been in love. She feels like she's missing out on a lot of things that, you know, normal quote unquote teenagers do. And so she feels like in order to feel like a growing teenager, a young adult, whatever, to advance in her life, she has to experience the classic milestones of young adulthood, you know, such as falling in love, being in a relationship. So she decides that in university, she's going to have this plan of falling in love with somebody and finding her person. And so throughout the story, we follow Georgia as she makes some interesting decisions to reach those goals and to find the person for her, as well as, you know, making friends, making mistakes, going through college, things like that. So that's what the book is about in a very, very short and condensed way, in case you were not aware. But yes, now let's get into our ratings and opinions.
All right. Well, I gave this book 5 stars. It was like my number 2 favorite book of last year. So I think like the main reason why I love this book so much is because it's one of the first like asexual protagonists that I've ever read in a book. And so I just connected so much with this main character, and it just normalized so many things for me that I always thought that I was like really strange for thinking that way. And so I just really, this book just really resonated with me, and it had a really big emotional impact for me. And I also just really love the characters in this book. I feel like even the side characters are so fleshed out, and they just feel so real to me. And this book has one of my favorite like side romances happening that I've ever read in a book. Like I really enjoyed like even the side romance. Like I was invested. So I just really, really love this book. It's a favorite for sure.
I'm still kind of deciding what I want to rate it. I'm one of those people who I rate something and then a month later I'm like, okay, that's actually what I'm going to rate it.
Yeah.
But I think I'm leaning towards like a 4.5. It's not like a new all-time favorite, but I think I need to reread it and like actually like really digest it, because I feel like there was so much happening that I really enjoyed. It was still a really good read for me too. Like it's not the first Ace book that I read, but I think it's the first one that's really done it a lot of justice. I feel like I read a couple other books where the character already knows who they are and isn't struggling. So I really liked how this book talked about the shame and the coercing yourself into doing things. So I feel like that's a journey that a lot of us Ace people, because I'm Ace, I like go through, where you're like trying to be normal. And I think that really touched me. I definitely cried a lot while reading this book and felt very seen and understood in a way I hadn't before. Like this is my first Alice Oseman book, so I think I really want to explore more of her work too, but I'm leaning towards like 4.5. It was a really solid experience, and I'm like, I kind of want to give this to my parents and be like, understand me. Get what I feel.
Yeah, so I definitely am around like a 4-star. I really, really, okay, one of my favorite things about Alice Oseman, which I'll probably say again multiple times in this live show, is that they have just such a way of writing characters that feel so real. Like they feel like people that could literally be in your life, and people who are like people who you can meet anywhere and will understand you. And I am typically not a big fan of like found family type of stories, but the way that Alice Oseman writes them in a way that just feels very well-rounded, where, because in a lot of like stories like this, you'll find people not having close relationships with their families, or like in fantasy where they have no family and there's no like there's no balance. But I feel like Alice Oseman writes so well in a way that you just fall for the characters' experiences, even if you don't like them, you fall for their experiences. And so I really enjoyed this book, and I have so many tabs and what it talked about. And I definitely agree with Jess about how like this is the type of book that you literally like, it's, I don't want to say it's like a manual but it's literally like the dictionary of like, I don't want to explain why I think and feel the way I feel. Like, just read this book and you'll understand what I'm talking about. You know what I mean? Yeah. And I also kind of agree that this is the type of book where you just like, you read, like you said, all these books of people trying to find themselves, and it feels sometimes surface level, but this book was full of so many mistakes that Georgia made and so many mistakes that other characters made. And even the side plot of like the romance happening between two other characters just felt so real. Like there were so many real issues and so many real discussions. And so I just really loved this book because it was just such a great, like it made a lot of things in my brain like make sense, where I was like, whoa, what? Like, you know, I don't know. And like Gabby said too, like a lot of things where you feel strange for thinking and feeling, you read something like this and you're like, oh my God, wait.
Yeah.
Like you just feel seen. And so I really love that aspect. But what made it not a 5-star for me was I felt like the book dragged in a lot of places. And there were a lot of things that could have just been cut down, or a lot of things that I just didn't personally like. And I am not a big fan of like Shakespeare stuff. And so I was like, can we hang it up?
Like, don't say that to the theater major.
Yeah, because I'm not. So I was like, this is the type of book that somebody who's like a theater major or loves English or like English is my least favorite subject. Like if I have to talk about, like, I just hate it. So when I was like, I'm not another English major. So I was like, man, you know, so though that and then the story dragging were like the things that made it not a 5-star for me. But overall, I just feel like this is the type of book where you really can hold on to this book and feel like this describes me. And I feel like there are not that many books like that. Radio Silence is one of them, for anybody wondering. But it's just like one of those things where it's like, this is me, you know. But yeah. Let me see what the comments are saying. Okay, 4.5 stars. I related a lot and enjoyed it. Yeah, I agree. I definitely think this could have been like 50 pages shorter, maybe. Okay, 5 stars. Aw. Cool. I really like the last parts, but the beginning, I can see that. Okay, yeah, pretty much everyone's kind of saying similar things. If you're like not a big fan of contemporaries, I don't know, what would you guys say? Like, I don't know if Alice Oseman. Oh, you did like Radio Silence. Okay, then yeah, I would still read it. But typically, like, if you're not a big fan of contemporaries, I don't know that Alice Oseman would be the first place to start. Because her writing is just very, very contemporary, you know.
100%. Even the way she structures her chapters are very like snippets of like these moments you can pop in and out of. Completely contemporary. There's like no action moving forward, like maybe a little action, but like the action is like I sent a text to someone, so it's like very, very contemporary.
Yeah, and there's a lot of like pop culture references, but they're just done so well. Like when I saw TikTok in there, I was like, wait.
I was like, when was this written? I was like, dang, because Timothy Chalamet was also mentioned and stuff. I was like,
yeah, Timothy Chalamet was mentioned at the beginning of the book about people being like obsessed with him, and I was like, when was this written? You know.
Well, Alice Oseman is like young too, isn't she? Like 25 or 26, so like she's like in the know.
Right, that's what I was saying. Like Alice Oseman just has a way of writing that just feels very modern, but not in a forceful way. Like you just feel like we're here right now, you know. Okay, 10.5, mainly because of the audiobook. There's an audiobook?
I know what.
I wish I had it, man. I was looking for it. I wanted it so bad.
Right. I was literally looking for the audiobook and it was like, not available. Available. I was like, okay, well, is this just fake? Yeah, agree. Okay, so yeah, most people are saying that the ending kind of dragged and they felt like it could have been shorter. And yeah, I definitely agree with that. When you're writing Tina. Yes, this is the, because some authors, like John Green.
No.
Some real popular YA authors.
Yeah, some authors, I'm like, who speaks like this? Who speaks like this? Yeah, okay, so I'm not alone. Yeah, I think if you're like a huge Shakespeare fan or a huge literature fan or a huge theater fan, you're gonna love that aspect. But I was just kind of like, skipping the pages. I was like, should I skip the pages? But I was like, no, you know what? I'm gonna read it all and I'm gonna just suffer. But yeah. Okay, cool. And then I know we've already talked about reading Alice Oseman's work. Gabby, you have read Alice Oseman's work before, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I read Radio Silence like 4 years ago, maybe now. I feel like I need to reread it because I feel like I listened to it on audio, so I feel like maybe I should just read it physically if I reread it because I loved it, but I didn't love it as much as I loved Loveless, so I'm like, maybe I should revisit it. And then I read Heartstopper. I've read the first 2 books, I think. But those are
I have read Radio Silence both as an audiobook and physically, and I think physically was just wow.
Yeah, I know. I need to revisit it.
Yeah, and I rarely say that about books where I'm like, physically was it, but yeah, that's definitely that. All right, so we're gonna start getting into spoilers now. So if you haven't finished the book, this is a good time to exit because we're gonna go into talking about like our favorite characters, why they were your favorite character, and I feel like that could lead into spoilers, so just in case. But yeah, what was you guys' favorite characters and why?
It's hard. Oh my god, I don't know. I kind of just love the unit. To pick a favorite would be like sad. And I don't know. Does anyone else have a favorite, like a distinct favorite?
I mean, I think Georgia was probably my favorite just because I like connected and related to her like so much. But I also really loved Rooney as a side character. Like she was just really interesting to me, and just she kind of almost like some of it reminded me of like Fangirl a little bit with the whole like roommate vibes, and she kind of reminded me of Reagan from Fangirl. So I was just really intrigued by Rooney's character.
Yeah,
I was literally that this was Fangirl but queer.
Yeah, exactly.
I've never read Fangirl, so that's interesting. I don't even know why I asked this question. I was just so curious because I don't have a favorite character. But I always like to know like who do people like the most. And I don't know, I think Rooney was really interesting because kind of seeing her thought process, especially hearing about like her past relationship and how that led to who she was now, and then just seeing the whole friend group. Jason was super like I was like, oh. Like I was just like, oh, bless your heart. Like I just felt so bad the entire time because now like even talking about that, since we've kind of already talked about, well, Gabby, you didn't say who you did, you said Georgia. But since I'm kind of already talking about Jason, we can talk about the Jason and Georgia situation.
Yeah.
And what we thought about that while I look at these comments.
I don't know. I feel like for me, it was so, like, I feel like even though I hated reading it and I was like, damn, I really feel bad for Jason. I also, as someone who grew up and was dating people because I felt like that was the normal thing to do and like trying to kiss people and stuff, I kind of really resonated with her in the sense of like, yes, it's bad to use someone, but it's like my intention was really just to actually try and be normal. Like it wasn't like anything with malintent. So I felt really bad for both of them. And it kind of like, I'm kind of grateful that she actually decided to do it with someone she trusted because I didn't. So I really actually enjoyed that like point of view because I think a lot of us end up just dating people because that's what you're supposed to do, quote unquote. And it like seeing her actually like do it safely in a way that she not like that she felt really comfortable because obviously she didn't feel comfortable with any of it. But like I feel like though she forced herself to kiss twice, she never crossed too many lines, which I really appreciated. Because, like, you don't have to try those things to know that you don't want them. I feel icky that she did that to her best friend, but at the same time, I'm like, okay, at least it's someone who understands you and respects your boundaries. And, like, so I kind of feel, like, happy it was, like, with him, but also very sad because he honestly liked her. I felt really bad.
Yeah, I mean, I thought, that whole thing was pretty awkward to read about, but I'm also glad that it was included because I do think that's something that a lot of, like, ace people deal with is, like, maybe, like, trying to force something that isn't there or, like, isn't natural just because you feel like you're supposed to or whatever. And, I just thought it was nice that it was there, but it was super awkward to read about.
Yeah. I I related to that situation a lot, especially this comment right here. Like being best friends with somebody when you are aro ace and then like being shipped. Oh my God, does that make me so angry? Because I have been through a situation like that where you're friends with someone and everyone's like, oh, but you spend all your time together. You must be in love. Oh, you're different genders, like whatever. Like, oh my God, are you secretly dating? Blah, 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 blah. And like, I agree with both of you guys that like that is something that a lot of people go through, feeling like you have to date someone, feeling like you have to sleep with them, whatever it may be, in order to prove that you're like normal and that you're like everyone else. Like people are always like, well, how do you know that you don't like blank if you've never done it? And it's funny because if you were to ask them the exact same thing, then it's like, well, no. So you know what I mean? Like, why does the same logic not apply? So I think it's really interesting that Georgia was like in that situation and Jason was in that situation, because I think that is very, very realistic. It was very uncomfortable to read, and like I felt so bad for both of them. But I do agree, especially about the fact that like this was done with somebody who she trusted and was her friend, and like afterwards when they talked about it, like Jason was mad and he was rightfully, like it was his right to be upset, because that's a horrible thing for someone who's your best friend to do to you, you know what I mean? And like he had every right to even choose to never speak to her again, you know?
Yeah.
So it's really interesting to kind of like see that and to see Georgia's perspective, because it was like, oh, well, I understand her, but this is terrible and I hate it here.
Yeah.
You know? So, yeah. It was definitely a sad moment. I think for the situation, I can see why Georgia was in the wrong, but she did it. Yeah. Yeah, it definitely was not something that should have happened. And even thinking about it, because I know that Rooney was part of like the whole thing of being like, oh, like that would be like, I'll help you, you know what I mean? And I think it's also like the immediate thing is to be like, well, she wouldn't have done it if Rooney hadn't like, you know, encouraged her, blah, blah, blah. But like, maybe this is like an unpopular opinion, but I feel like if like because Georgia was like, oh, I don't really know where to start, blah blah blah. As a friend, you're probably gonna want to help them figure it out. And what's your first instinct gonna be? Oh, let's find you a boyfriend. You know what I mean? And like, who's the first person you're gonna think about? The person in proximity that already is best friends with Georgia. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Exactly. Like he's already best friends with her. He already likes her. So I can see why the first initial reaction would be like, oh, let's pair these two people together, which is funny because I feel like, and this just makes me think about the whole, this is kind of a tangent, but not really. You know, when people are like friends with somebody who's like the opposite gender and everyone's just like, well, for example, like men and women can't be friends because you're going to fall in love. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it was just like interesting to see that, because I just felt really bad for both of them, especially that really awkward kiss. I was like, ah. I was like, walk away. That was like, how do you even speak to someone again after that? I wouldn't.
You wouldn't?
I feel like, well, it's been nice knowing you. See you in 5 years when I've recovered. So it was just a sad moment for both of them. I wonder, I like wonder how that would have gone if they had like never been friends again.
I know. That'd be sad, I think.
Yeah. Because in real life, I wonder if somebody would be like, after a couple of months, like, fine.
Yeah, I honestly feel like, and that's why maybe it felt like it dragged on for a lot of people, but I actually like how much weight this carried. Like that you do this to your best friend, this isn't something you can bounce back from after a chapter. That both Jason and like they were just there was a lot of weight to their decisions, like a bunch of other things that happened later on that we'll talk about maybe. But like I liked that in real life, if you did something like that, you wouldn't be able to bounce back. And even though he did bounce back and it took a lot of time, I'm glad it took that, because I think in real life, people would not if you did that to a friend. And I also think in kind of real life circumstances, if you dated someone and you did that to them, yeah, they would like ghost you. They would be like very upset because romantic relationships for a lot of people don't understand. And the thing that was really cool about Jason is that he was understanding of, oh, we don't have to kiss, or maybe we don't have to have sex. I don't know. Every relationship I've tried to have with a straight guy thinks love and sex is the same thing. So I feel like in real life, I don't know if you'd be lucky enough to have a Jason who understands that those two things aren't connected. Maybe, I don't know. That's how I feel. I'm like, he's a rare being and I love him. So I'm very thankful. But I'm like, I've had a lot of people who are like, what's that other character who's really mean and all the pride.
That one person who was in the Pride show, she kept like talking about all these internet sexualities. I was like,
exactly. That's the standard belief that most people have, in my opinion. So I don't know.
Yeah. It's definitely interesting because I agree with you about the weight of what Georgia did, because there was a point in the book where I literally, when I was reading that, I closed the book and I was like, I can't read further. I was like, I can't read further. And I think it was so realistic that when Georgia texted Jason, he opened it and didn't respond. And I thought that was just so realistic because that is what would happen. Like, it's not wrong to explore your identity and explore who you are, but when you do it at the cost of someone else's feelings, especially somebody who you say you love, somebody who you care about, and you hurt them like that, they have every right to never speak to you again.
Yeah.
Like, Jason had every right to open that message and block her if he wanted to. You know what I mean? Because like, Georgia knew, like, even though she wasn't aware, like, she knew, and she had been told by other people that he felt this way. You know what I mean? And he also was very kind of like obvious about it, even though I know, like, even me personally, like, you could have a crush on me and I would never know. I'd be like, besties. Like, you know, so it's just very interesting to see that. But yeah, that was so uncomfortable.
But it also kind of made me happy to see it because I feel like a lot of us have been through that or worse. Like, where it's
yeah, I think that goes back to what Gabby
is represented, not happy to read it. That's
I know what you mean.
To clarify.
No, but it's going back to like what Gabby said earlier about the book normalizing a lot of things that you feel and think, because you're just like, oh wow, okay, cool. So I'm not the only one who was like, you know,
exactly.
This book just, I wonder what other people like outside of BookTube think about this book. You know what I mean? Like the Tumblr people. What do you think about this book?
They're probably like, what? Can't relate.
My next question. Oh, this is funny. He was.
He really is. He deserves a raise.
Like, I'm also glad that we didn't, this is kind of moving forward a little bit, but I'll say it really briefly. I'm glad that we didn't see Jason in a relationship at the end of this book. Like, I'm glad it didn't end with something like that, because I just think that Jason has been through a lot. So it's really nice to just see things kind of just mellow down in the end. But that's all I say for now. Because our next question is, were you surprised about the friendship and dynamic between like Rooney and Georgia and their like immediate friendship?
I mean, it, like, in a way, I guess it was surprising, but it's also like, I don't know, I feel like sometimes when you're roommates with someone, it just kind of like forces that, like, it's like forced proximity, like you're always around them. So it's like, I just feel like sometimes friendships just kind of form and you get really close because of that. But I don't know, I feel like sometimes people that are complete opposites really attract to each other because they learn a lot from each other. And I don't know, so.
No, I completely agree. When you have a roommate in your first year of college and you're away from everyone and you don't have that many friends already, like, I feel like immediate friendship is totally natural. But then I also really appreciated the realisticness of the circumstance that everyone was trying to make friends. Rooney was out there really trying to socialize and make connections and stuff, and a lot of them failed. So it kind of makes sense that she was able to at least find 1 or 2 or 3 good friends out of all her months of socializing and hanging out with people. But I found that dynamic to be pretty interesting because they were opposites, and I think they both really admired aspects of each other. Like I think Rooney, I know Georgia explained that she like really wanted to be Rooney, but then I also feel like Rooney really wanted to be like Georgia in the sense of, I forget how in the book she talked about it, but I think they really like kind of inspired each other to be better people in a sense.
Yeah.
I kind of like that, and I think that's really cool to see, especially in a college setting, because I feel like a lot of college settings, a lot of the friendships you make are probably like surface level, where you're like, hi, hello, talk up college, like you're gonna fall in love, you're gonna have the best friends ever, you're gonna this and that. It's like I think your real friendships that really matter are the ones like few, but they're like really important. They're like, you understand me. We don't have to go to a club every night. Like we could just hang out and just talk silent, and you understand how I feel. And I think that's kind of like real friendship, where it's like, I'm really freaking sad and I just need to cry. Can you come cuddle me for a second? Like I'm here for you. Bear hug. Like that's like good friendship. And I thought that was really honest to see in the book.
I definitely, so this is funny, right when I was trying to get started with the book, because I started this book maybe like 3 or 2 days before the live show. I was like, I'm panicking. But so when I was reading it, Alice Oseman actually posted a picture on their Instagram where they talked about going to this exact college and how they also had a roommate, but they never became friends. And that's why I put this question, because I was super interested in the idea that living with someone in the same room kind of just makes you get close, because I'm very, very extroverted. So I remember in college being the person that would come home at 2 a.m. or whatever it was and be like, hey guys. And then I met my best friend who's also an extrovert, and we're both similar and different. And it's just interesting to see. And I agree with this comment. I felt really bad for Rooney, because I feel like one thing that I related to her so much, especially in the beginning of the book, because when you're in college, when you start out, your main goal is to go out there, make friends, however way you can. You're joining clubs, you're joining this, you're going here, you're going there. And even as somebody who is extroverted, you slowly start to learn, because I get my energy from being around people, right? But you slowly start to learn what it means to be around people. What people are you around? What people are you spending your time with? What does that kind of trickle into your own feelings and your own beliefs? Because something that I had to learn was okay, yeah, being around a bunch of people, cool. But are they a bunch of people that you enjoy spending your time with? Are they a bunch of people that you feel can be there for you when you need them to? And I feel like maybe this is an extrovert stereotype, but the feeling that you have a lot of friends, but nobody is really your friend, I think is what Rooney's character kind of symbolized. And I'm very different now from when I was in college. And it's so interesting to see how being an extrovert can change when you find your people. It's a different feeling. It feels worthwhile. I'm going to use that word for now because I can't remember what word I was going to use instead.
Yeah. I also feel that when it came to Rooney's character at the beginning, I do like seeing that she kind of, it was that extrovert, but it wasn't easy. I feel like everyone always says it's so easy to do this, to give your energy, be nice and stuff. But I kind of like that, she really struggled. It's not easy to always be happy and be bubbly. I really liked seeing that character trait in her from the very first day they met, where it was she seems bubbly, but it doesn't seem so real. So I kind of like that too, because it's if you're giving your energy to every single person and no one's reciprocating, it's exhausting. So I kind of like that representation too.
Yeah, I was going to bring this up right now. So it's so funny that somebody commented this, because I was going to say her plant, Roderick, was literally a symbol of her mental state. Because you start the book and Roderick is alive and healthy. Everybody's looking at Roderick and I think that was her plant's name. But everybody's looking at the plant being oh my God, amazing plant. But even the rug in their room, everything was pristine and being watered, things were happening. She was out there. But then you slowly start seeing she's oh my God, I forgot to water the plant. Blah, 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 blah. And then the time when Georgia comes back and the plant literally looks dead. Like that was just such a great aspect of the story, because the whole time I was like, the plant. I'm not even a plant person, and I was like, the plant.
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely enjoyed her character. But it's funny because Jason's character is like super active in the story. George's character super active, Rooney's character super active. But what did you guys think about Pip's character? Because I feel like her character, there were certain points where I felt like she just disappeared, or like just wasn't really in the story as much as I wish she was. But what did you guys think? Because in the beginning she was. So
I know, I honestly didn't notice that too much, if I'm being honest, but I don't know. I think it's probably because, like, since it was all from George's perspective and they were kind of like, not like drifting apart, but they just like were going to different schools. And so it was like, they just didn't have as much time.
Yeah.
As much, but
yeah. I totally agree. But I also feel like I appreciated the moments that she was present, because I feel like, as you said, Alice Oseman writes really good characters. Every person was very distinct. And I really like the gems she put in, like about how like the queer community can be kind of really white, and how she was struggling with that. And at university, she was really thriving, finally finding groups that she could really explore and feel herself. After reading that chapter, I was like, okay, she good, fam. She's thriving. So I guess I wasn't too worried about her when she left, because I feel like she was finally comfortable with herself, which is interesting, because I think that's why we focused a lot on everyone else. Because everyone else was, am I bi? Am I asexual, aro? Like, they're trying to figure themselves out. Even Jason's trying to understand his feelings towards like their relationship. Whereas she was like, I'm good. I do not need you guys dragging me down. I'm thriving for once in my life. So I kind of liked that about her. But I could see she did, fade to the black. But I think while she was faded to the black, she was out there having a good time. That's how I felt.
Yeah, I felt like she was the most like well-rounded person, even though we didn't see her. Like, she was doing her own thing. Even at the beginning, when they were like getting into college, like when Georgia made the little note of her outfits being different and how like she's more confident now with the way she dresses. So I really thought that like her not being a focus in the story was her experiencing life in another area is my hope. I was like, oh, she's living her best life. We love to see it. But yeah, I also agree that it's realistic. And I think this is something too that I think is interesting, the idea of like what close friendship means. Because to me, it doesn't mean like you're hanging out with someone every single day or you're speaking to them every single day. It's more like of a feeling of like what's the value of when you're together. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And the amount of effort it takes to have a sustained friendship as an adult when you're working and doing classes and figuring out your sexuality and all the things that life has. I feel like this book really values friendship in such an adult way, because I feel like in YA, it's like, we see each other in the hallways all the time, yada, yada. In college, like as you grow up, having a friendship is really difficult. Sacrificing time where you could be thriving in your career or in your mental health, and you're kind of taking that time to be with someone who you hope to reciprocate feelings for. So you have to have that feeling, like you said, but like at the same time, it takes time. You have to literally make time out of your day to be with these people. So I like that about this book.
Yeah, I also think too, like as an adult, when the people who are having relationships and whatever, those things tend to, for them, become a very important aspect of their life. And so when you're somebody who is not, which is another thing I loved about this book, going back to what Jess said about the book feeling so like dealing with relationships in a very adult way, is that it's interesting because when you're like getting older and your friends are like dating or they're like getting married or having kids, whatever, you're like, oh, when are we gonna have some fun and do something? And they're like, well, me and my boyfriend are like going here, me and my daughter, me and my son, you know what I mean? Like, so it's really interesting to kind of see how like people's time is so different as you get older, because it is very difficult to sustain friendships, especially with people around you when you are an adult. And to like meet with someone every single weekend is a big deal when you're an adult. Like, it's a huge deal. You're like, whoa, all this time for me? What? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
What were some of your like favorite scenes in the book. Like, feel free to share scenes, quotes, whatever you want. I'm gonna look for mine because I think I bookmarked some.
Definitely
And
annotate.
everyone in the comments, share your scenes, favorite scenes or quotes or moments. I'm like trying to find the one that I saved.
I loved a lot of her quotes that were about like how she was like a huge lover of like reading romance books, but how like, or when the guy was like, "You're new at romance," and she's like, "No, like I'm an academic at romance. Like I've been studying this shit forever." Like I love those kind of quotes. And this one that I really liked is on page 87, and she said, "Wondering why picturing myself in any sort of romantic or sexual situation made me feel like I was going to vom or run a mile, while romance in movies felt like the sole purpose of being alive." Like I love.
Yes.
I definitely was like, mood.
Yeah.
There were just some also really just funny ways she like said or like kind of defined asexuality. I highlighted a sentence like, "So I don't look at men or women or anything and think, wow, I want to do sexy stuff to them."
Yeah.
I think someone like said that. That was a dialogue that I just really liked because it's like I just like the way she kind of broke it down in a very digestible way. Because I feel like sometimes people go too big, and I think that's why Georgia struggled with the concept of like, well, romance. Like I've loved romance since I was a kid. Why won't I love it like physically, or why don't I get that spark, the elusive spark? And I just like how it's like, yeah, sometimes I don't get those sexy time feelings. Like I don't want to do that. And just like. And also that whole scene where she's talking to Rooney about masturbation was just maybe a little cringy to some people. I was laughing so hard.
That was hilarious.
Yes. It was great.
Okay, so I have two parts that were my favorites. One of them I'm going to read. It's the part where it's literally right at the beginning, like on page 9. And it's the part where Georgia's talking about how people always say, like, you'll find someone eventually. And it goes, "You'll find someone eventually. That was what everyone said, and they were right. Teen romances only worked out in movies anyways. All I had to do was wait, and my big love story would come. I would find the one. We would fall in love, and I'd get my happily ever after." And that just made me think about how literally every movie, I honestly can't think of a single movie, even if it's like a cartoon, whatever, there's always some element of romance. And I love romance movies. Usually I like the really sad ones, but I love romantic elements and stuff. But it's just so interesting that like there's barely anything that doesn't include some, even if it's an action movie, even if it's like a horror movie, there's always some element of a couple, of dating, of romance. And it's just interesting because all it communicates is like everyone will find their person. And even if you're somebody who doesn't believe that, you often find yourself saying like, there's someone for everyone, you know, that type of thing. So
well, that's what I mean. This is like the first book that I've ever read that had an asexual character who actively loved romance and like wasn't ashamed of loving romance in books, but just had trouble realizing like this isn't what I want, but I like reading about it. And I think that that's like what you said, that's so right about how there's literally romance in almost everything that we see and read and everything like that. So it's almost like it makes us think like this is something we should want, and that's what makes us feel like we're not normal in the first place. You know? So that's why I really liked the discussion of that in this book too, because I think that's like the first time I've ever read something like that in a book, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like there's somebody else who loves romance that doesn't want it for themselves.
That's definitely like a mood. And I think another one of my favorite scenes, which I won't read because it was a lot, but it's the scene where Rooney tells Georgia that she loves her.
Yeah.
That part, I feel like even though that was like surprising, that whole like discussion, I felt like that was the perfect person to have that conversation with Georgia and just say like, I love you. Like obviously I'm not in love with you, but I love you, you know, because I feel people, even like pretty much everyone, can confuse the feeling of loving someone and being in love with someone, because you can love someone and honor them and respect them and you can want to be with them, you can want to date them, whatever it is, and not feel like falling in love is necessary or is a part, because there are a lot of like aromantic people who are in relationships, and it doesn't have to be like, oh, I'm in love with this person, like whatever, you know what I mean? And that scene reminded me a lot of Radio Silence, because a big part of Radio Silence is the two characters loving each other so much but not being in love with each other.
Mhm.
So I just really loved that scene, because I was like, yes, declaration of love, and it doesn't have to be we're about to be a couple.
Yeah.
Yeah. The
So
platonic
great.
love in this book was so cool to see, because it's, people really tend to kind of mush together love as this one thing, like the idea, like you said earlier, that men and women can't be friends. It's like, no, you can really love someone. It's the same way you love your parents. Doesn't mean you're trying to like hate them. That's nasty.
Yeah.
Like people's idea of love is very narrow, and I just like how this book really opens it to be like, you can love a lot of people in your life and give a lot of energy to them without having like a romantic need or sexual need. Love is not like like you said, the difference of falling in love and in loving someone. Like, I love you as a person. Like, you're a really good person, and I want you in my life, and I want to be friends with you. I want to be a part of your big moments in life. That's very different than like, I'm in love, which I think, people really never differentiate the two, which I thought was very cool in this book. To see the platonic love. I can love a good person. They're good people.
Yeah, and I saw this TikTok too a couple days ago that was talking about being aromantic, and the person talked about how like there's so many ways to love people. Like, you can love someone and spend your time with them and want to be around them all the time and just give them a lot of time and energy because you love them, but it doesn't have to equal I'm in love with you, like I can't stop thinking about you, blah blah blah. Like, they were basically talking about how falling in love and being in love and romance is just such like a concept that's just made up, because if you ask someone, like if you ask person A, oh, what's romance to you? Person A could be like, oh, romance to me is flowers and chocolate and Valentine's Day and blah, 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 blah. And then you ask person B, and person B is like, well, romance to me is going on a picnic and watching movies. Like, so romance is just such an interesting concept, and like what makes people fall in love. And it's interesting too, like even the concept of like butterflies, like what, you know,
butterflies, all that stuff.
right, like even that. So I think it's just really interesting. And I also like this part too, the part, I think this is the part with George's cousin, where they were talking, when she was like overhearing her cousin talking to the parents. That was so sad to read. I was like, oh no. This is sad.
But also, I love that that there's love in my paintings part, because specifically a lot of people tend to not value the love that of your career or love in your passion and your hobbies, because that's a, like, you don't always need to have love in a pet, in a person, in a tangible thing. Sometimes it can be in what you do. You can love working out because of the way it makes you feel. You can love drawing because of the way it makes you feel. Like, those are still very valid feelings of love.
Yeah, I think I also really love that scene because I think the cousin's name was Alice, but when Alice was talking to her parents, and her parents were like, well, what are you going to do when your grandma's age and you're alone and you live by yourself and you're sad and depressed and lonely? And it's always so interesting to me when people say things like that, because I feel like, do they just think that when you get older, all your friends just disappear?
I know.
And all your hobbies and all the things you enjoy, like all of a sudden, because you're 65, all the airports are shut down and like all the restaurants are closed. You know what I mean? Like, it's like the fear of being older and being alone. I'm like, is that fear strong enough to make every person on this earth marry someone? You know?
I guess.
I'm like, interesting, because they always just bring up the, what are you going to do when you're older? Like, you're young now, but when you get older, like, okay, maybe someone might decide when they're older to marry someone for companionship and not love. That does not change them not being interested in falling in love. That doesn't change anything. It just means now you're with someone for companionship. You know what I mean? And even if you don't want to be.
Yeah, like that reminds me of one of my other like favorite quotes and parts in this book. And not that like every asexual person will like end up alone or anything like that, but I loved how she said like, how could I feel so sad about giving up these things that I didn't actually want? And she's like, I felt like I was grieving this fake life in this future I was never going to live. And like that hit me so hard because I've never really heard it described in that way, where like, yeah, like you've always imagined these things for yourself because you've loved romance your whole life, and so you've always expected like, I'm gonna get married one day and have kids. And then as you start to realize like maybe this isn't something that you want, it's almost like you grieve this future that you expected that you would have. And I just thought that was so beautifully written, and that really hit me.
Yeah, I definitely think like it's such a crushing feeling when you like sit down with yourself and you're like, I never wanted this in the first place.
Yeah,
and now I'm sad that I won't have it. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
exactly.
There's a lot of brainwashing in our media to make it sound, even in like our structural families, like parents I don't even think realize when they ask about when you're dating someone. It's so common when you go home that you're like, so who are you dating? My aunts are always like, so where's your boyfriend? So what's happening? Where are you going? And I'm like, I don't have plans. If it happens, it happens. But I don't need that. And it's just so interesting that we are really brainwashed to believe that that is what we are here on this earth to do.
Yeah.
And it's kind of scary, that you like. I felt that too, that mourning your possible future because you were convinced that this was the norm. I still struggle with that, where I'm like, I need to accept that like that doesn't have to be the normal, and I can be happy with myself. And I feel like what you said, Chanel, about when you're 60 and all your friends disappear, I feel like people feel that way when they're like 30. They're like, I'm scared everyone's gonna be gone and I'm gonna be left alone. So they marry someone and just tie them down, and like they want to be happy. And it's like, well, our divorce rate is up. Maybe we shouldn't just be marrying people just to marry people. Maybe you should, live your life, enjoy your life, and if someone comes along, then you marry them. And you shouldn't be getting married and having kids just because your grandma wants grandkids. Like this just is such an odd concept that I need to live my life for other people. It's like, no, you should live it for yourself and be happy.
Yeah, I think that like everybody is going to be different, whether you are like ace or arrow or both. You might still decide you want to be with someone for the companionship or for whatever reason it is. And I think that some people are going to get married, some people are not going to get married. But I think what is so important is understanding that that is not the path that everyone wants to take. And that is perfectly fine. Because also, this is coming back to me, one of my other favorite parts of the book was at the very, very beginning when Georgia talked about just literally picking any random conventionally attractive person and being like, oop, that's the one I like. And then to the point where it got to her having to kiss that guy. Oh, I was like, girl, it's not butterflies, it's fear.
Yeah. That's don't do it.
Yeah. Like, it's just definitely like so interesting to see. There are so many things, like going back to what Gabby said at the beginning of the live, that this book just made just feel so normal and right. And even the conversation with Alice, where Alice was like, you are so lucky that you're figuring it out now. And Georgia was like, I don't feel lucky because everybody is doing what they're doing now. And like when you're younger, there's just all this pressure to be like everybody around you because everyone's like pairing up and you're like, oh my God, if I don't pair up, I'm going to be the only person that's like, that doesn't have a couple. Like, who am I going to take photos with? Blah, blah, blah. And I feel like that is just such like a sad thing in our society, that like being in a relationship is almost like a social currency. Because if all your friends are married and you're like in your 30s and you're single, then it's like you don't get invited to the married people things, or like people are talking about their kids, you don't get invited to the kids people things. And this is a good point as well about that.
It's like everyone wants to go on double dates and you don't get invited to things anymore, and you're like, okay, I didn't know how to be in a relationship to hang out.
Right. Like, and I even remember being younger and my friends being like, oh, can't wait until you get a boyfriend and you can come triple date with us. And I'd be like,
yeah, what?
We love to see it. Can't wait.
Yeah.
I'm like, we love a discount.
It's crazy how much our life surrounds like the heteronormative, like dating someone, like date anyone, and the fear that I feel like a lot of parents have onto their kids about their kids being sad and alone forever. It's like, you can be lonely, but just because you were in a like a romantic relationship doesn't mean you're happy either. Happiness really comes from yourself. And if you're reliant on another person, even a friendship, if you're solely reliant on that for happiness, that's not going to give you a long-term solution to life. You're going to still have to face those issues eventually. So I just think it's really crazy.
Yeah. I just think like overall, oh, Gabby's mom had a point. Yeah. Oh, that's cute. I love the little emoji. Right with the
Very true.
Yeah, I just
love is
think that
ever growing and changing.
Right. And I think like this book is definitely one that, even though there were parts of it that I was just kind of like, and some other parts, it's a book that I know, like knowing myself, it's a book, and I hardly reread things, but this is the type of book that I feel like could easily feel like home to somebody who needed it. Like it's the kind of book where you could flip through pages and just find the page that you need in whatever moment. And that's kind of how I am with Radio Silence too. Alice Oseman just has me in a hold. Yeah. And I've only read 2 books. But yeah, it's just like such a great book. But what I'm wondering too is before we get into like some final thoughts, because we are at an hour, I'm wondering, are you guys going to be reading another Alice Oseman book? And what book is kind of like on your radar? I don't know if you know anything about the other books, but do you have any on your radar?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely want to reread Radio Silence now, because like since I did read it a few years ago, like, and I listened to the audiobook, I feel like I didn't do it justice. So I definitely want to reread Radio Silence, and I want to finish the Heartstopper series. I know there's 2 more out, I think, that I haven't gotten to yet, but those are at the top of my list for sure.
I this is the first, so I definitely want to check out more of her work. I think Radio Silence is probably on the top of my list. I've heard a lot about Heartstopper. The thing is, when it comes to really popular books, I tend to take a really long time to get around to them because I'm scared of them. Or so I'm waiting for my expectations to kind of lower before getting any of those things. And I really love comic books, so Heartstopper, like, I don't know if I'm gonna get into it, so I'm a little scared. But I definitely want to I definitely want to read Radio Silence now, especially, and knowing her writing style. But I also kind of just want to reread this. Like I feel like this was such a good book in my opinion, because I really like Fangirl. I know we mentioned it earlier, and I liked it because Kath and her like experience growing up and being by herself and not having her twin sister. And like starting her career path, dealing with anxiety and possibly depression and all that stuff felt so authentic to my experience growing up, feeling like, oh, I'm kind of isolated now. And I feel like this is now like that feeling you said about being at home. When I open Fangirl, it's funny because I start to feel a real like I don't always leave that book feeling super happy. I kind of like have an emotional like turmoil of, wow, this really resonates with me. And I feel like I felt that way while reading this. So I kind of want to keep like, I feel like I want to put this down for a month and then pick it up again and see if I still feel that way, where it like just like has lots of like feelings come up, where it's like very authentic to my experience, where I might be crying left and right, but it's like it's authentic. I kind of like feeling seen in that way. I read like Fangirl at least once a year. Like I'm like
same.
Yeah,
I've read it 4 times now. I love that book.
I love it too. It's definitely home, and the writing style. This honestly feels very similar, very kind of nostalgic in the sense of my experience. So I don't know if I will try and read a lot of her other work, but like I think I want to read Radio Silence, but I kind of think I'm just gonna hold on to Loveless for a bit and be like, I'm gonna reread you.
Yeah, no, Radio Silence is so. It's funny actually. I read that book. I vividly remember reading that book, and so I read it for the first time January 2020, and then I read it again in August, and now I'm like, you know what? Every August, I think I'm gonna read the book.
Yeah,
because it's like very schooly. But yeah, Radio Silence is definitely one of those books that I don't know. Alice Oseman just has a way, and also the little Universe City cameo in this book. I was screaming.
Oh, yeah.
It'll make sense later, Jess, when you read Radio Silence.
I was like,
but
what?
Alice Oseman is big on the cameos.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Are there any like final thoughts that you want to share and kind of mention some things that you felt could have been better about the book, or that you forgot to mention throughout the live show that you wanted to say before we get into a little section where you might recommend 1 or 2 books to the audience?
I don't know. I feel like
I've said it all.
I know. I feel like I have covered most of the things that I really enjoyed about this book. Like, I mean, I didn't really have too many, like, anything I really disliked about this book. I think that's why it was a 5-star book for me. But yeah, it had been a long time since I'd gotten so emotional over a book. And I'm almost like, as much as I do want to reread this, like, I was flipping through last night and rereading some parts in preparation for today. But as much as I do want to reread it, I'm almost like nervous too, just because it made me so emotional the first time I read it. And I was just like, it's been a long
I watched your vlog.
Yeah, it was just like a lot. It took a lot out of me to read this book, so I'm almost like scared to reread it because it just hits so close to home that I'm like, I don't want to think about this, you know. So it's like, but I loved it so much.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it, and I don't know. I feel like I know it hits home, but I would honestly tell people, like, I would recommend this if you're interested in learning more about asexuality, romantic people. If you want to understand a family member, if you want to understand yourself a little bit more. And I just love how it talks about the spectrum, that everyone is so different. And I really appreciate that. I know some elements, like I'm a theater person. I love Shakespeare. But I think those fun aspects, it's really cool because the thing about theater, it's a home. So it's like a home away from home where people understand your niche. Because a lot of people don't, people love movies typically, but not really theater. So I feel like this book had a lot of layers that were very specific to me. So I obviously really, really enjoyed it. But I also think it's great. It almost feels like a resource in a sense of how people feel that heteronormative, you need to be in a romantic relationship isn't for everyone. And how can we kind of stop perpetuating this idea of if you're alone, you're lonely and sad and you don't have a future. It's like you can have love in other ways. So I don't know. I love the message of this story, that even if you want a romantic relationship or a sexual relationship in the future, that you don't need it to survive. Same way with Ruby, how she was filling her hole and like, sorry. Like, you know how she said,
yeah, I know what you're talking
about. But I like the idea of talking about really real college experience or grown-up experience where you're learning that having sex doesn't fix everything. You can enjoy it, but you really should be only doing the things that make you happy, giving energy to people that love and respect you. There's just so many good messages in this. So I would recommend it, even if it's a little bit longer and maybe not everyone loves contemporary, but I feel like it offers a lot of new information in a fun way, in my opinion.
Yeah, I definitely think that this is the type of book that is very much, like I said, manual, even though someday I'll think of a better word. But it's a good resource. There we go. A good resource, to kind of learn more and to maybe understand yourself more, other people more, things like that. And I definitely think that if you're not a fan of contemporary, I would recommend starting with Radio Silence first, because I think that is very, very fast compared to this. This is very slow. And the chapters here are like shorter, and it can be hard for people who hate contemporary to read. But I still think that this is just such a good and valuable book. So yeah, overall, just like such a good, I'm glad I picked it because I was like, I'm not sure what I'll think about it. Is Radio Silence a one-hit wonder? I hope not. I was like very sad already, but it's been a good time. Before we close out, do you guys have like maybe one recommendation that for a contemporary that you have recently enjoyed that you feel like the audience should maybe check out and read?
Well, like Jess was saying, I think Fangirl is a pretty good comparison to this book, just because I feel like if you really resonated with Georgia because of like her anxieties and things like that, I think Fangirl is a good recommendation because Kath like feels really similar to me in Georgia, and I just feel like she's very like isolated and just kind of like keeps to herself and is comfortable with being independent. And has a lot of anxiety about college and things as well. It also, because Fangirl also takes place during her first year of college, and she's like learning how to stay at a university and being away from family. So it has a lot of similarities to Fangirl. So I would definitely recommend Fangirl. It's so good.
Yeah, and like fangirl talking about fan fiction all the time too.
Mhm.
So there's a lot of correlation between those.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'd highly recommend that too, definitely. But if I had to recommend you one contemporary, one of my all-time favorite contemporaries, I'm a contemporary queen. I've been loving contemporary this past year, especially during the pandemic. I'm like, I just need some happiness, some real life stuff that isn't like pandemic-y. But my favorite would be Piecing Me Together by Renee Watson. I feel like if you love The Hate You Give or anything by Nick Stone and stuff like that, I think you would really love Piecing Me Together. It's about a girl, Jade, who's in high school. She is like a scholarship student. She takes the bus. I think she lives in Oregon, and she takes the bus to a private school. And she wants to travel. She really wants to expand her life in a way. And she's a plus-size Black girl, so there's a lot of difficulties. And she has friends who are white who don't understand her experience. A lot of the school programs that are geared towards Jade are to help her because she's Black and because she's like in this situation, and not for her betterment, but just as a program to kind of help her with her typical issues. It's hard to explain. There's a lot of layers. It is YA and it's not perfect, but I feel like that was the first book I felt seen. And I love it because it has nothing to do with romance or anything. It's about a girl trying to chase her dream and the limitations that life keeps giving her, and how do you keep fighting that fight and feeling worthy that you deserve the things that you deserve in life while still working hard for those things. So Piecing It Together by Renee Watson, all-time favorite, and I will never stop talking about it.
It definitely sounds interesting, so I'll be checking it out.
Girl, do it, please.
I literally just pulled it up on Storygraph, so we know where I will be next time I'm reading a contemporary. But okay, that is it, everyone. Thank you all for coming to the live show. I feel like we had such a great discussion, and overall, I saw like a lot of 4 and 5 stars. So I'm really happy. And I saw a couple 3s and a couple 2s, but most of them like 4 and 5. So I'm really happy that like people enjoyed this and that it was a good pick. My one regret is I wish that I had seen if the audiobook was available for people to have more access. So we hate to see it, but also I'm glad that everyone who read it really loved it. Do you guys have anything that you want to share about your channel or anything before we close out, or anything you're working on? I know Gabby has a book club that's reading Survive the Night this month, right?
Yes, yep.
Ooh, I'm excited for that. I'm reading it this week, so I'm excited.
Oh man.
And Jess has a book club too. What are you guys reading this month?
We're reading Elemental: The Shadows of the Other Side by Whitney Hill. The live show's tomorrow, but it's like an urban paranormal romance. It's really fun.
Oh, cool. Okay, and Jess's book club is the Brown Girl Book Club, and Gabby's is the Book Troop. So you can see all that in their links down below. So you can check out their channel. All the stuff will be on their channels. But thank you, everyone, for coming to the live show. Don't forget, this month we are reading The Echo Wife, and our live show will likely be in August. So there's plenty of time to read that. And thank you so much, Gabby and Jess, for joining me this month. It's been a really fun discussion.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
We'd love to see it. I will see everyone in the next live show. Thank you so much, and have a wonderful day.
Bye.